President Uhuru Kenyatta has defended his handshake with Raila Odinga, saying it's not political as Ruto team thinks. He said Raila has never told him about 2022 presidential bid. President Uhuru also wondered how Raila can write Jubilee yet he is in ODM.
I want to make a special note of thanks to my brother, the High Representative for Infrastructure and Development on the African continent, the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, for steering this initiative, which I hope will be the first of many to come. Our African dream is a storied tale of a continent that brims with promise, finding its feet in the modern world and strongly confident and striding confidently into the future of peace, prosperity, and unity. And I believe this was the dream of our founding fathers, men and women who saw in us the seeds of greatness, but also saw our vast potential to be a force for good, both on our continent and around the globe. Africa's golden path to its deserved destiny lies not in individual nations, as we have heard, striving against each other in fierce competition, but rather in coming together to build a common, better tomorrow for all those who I believe are privileged to call Africa home. The Pan-African dream of peace, prosperity, and unity is set to be spurred, I believe, by the imminent entry into force of the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. This continental feat, I believe, presents an extraordinary opportunity for Africa to become the single largest market in the world. We recognize here in Kenya the need for our continent's leading economies to deepen and to diversify our roles as both hubs and connecting tissues in order for this single market to succeed. But this requires African companies, some of you who are here, to take cross-border leadership in key industries, and for leading hubs, for example, like Kenya, to play their proper role as accelerators for the expansion and triumph of African homegrown champions. And to that end, we in Kenya have gone a step further to facilitate free movement of persons in the continent by offering visas on arrival to all African citizens, because we believe that we need to be able to move in order to trade. You cannot trade if you can't move. In order to create wealth and opportunities for more than 10 million young people who each year are joining the labor market in Africa, we have to open up our economies. We have to ensure that we create open markets, because this is the only way that we can promote value addition and manufacturing. Nobody will set up in Kenya to manufacture for 40 million people. But if you told people that you're coming to manufacture for 1 billion people, that's a whole different ballgame. People will then put their money into our continent. And this is where we need to go. And indeed, industrialization is the way to go if we are to achieve sustained and shared prosperity, as well as job creation for our people. But the question we need to ask ourselves is, what holds us back? What holds back our industrialization? The answer in itself is obvious. Forced borders that we continue to maintain, that were created for the purpose of exploitation and plunder, not for the benefit of the Africans, but for the benefit of those who carved out those borders. Today, we have insufficient stock of functional and quality infrastructure, energy, water, transport, the things that you've been discussing here, that will enable our companies to produce competitively not only for our domestic African market, but also for international markets. We recognize that high-quality infrastructure reduces, again, as has been stated and you have gone through in your days of discussion, it reduces transactional and other costs, enabling efficient use of labor and capital, but most importantly, enhancing connectivity between production points and market points. We have a financing gap. We need to ask ourselves, as you indeed have been asking yourselves, how do we do that? This is potential investment for African companies to also take advantage of. It is amazing that we have our pension funds, the African continent, investing in buildings, in empty quarries, when they could be investing in infrastructure and getting a return for future. This is where we need to go. Governments across the African continent must also recognize and provide an enabling environment for public and private sector engagement through public-private partnerships, and thus attract the private capital that is necessary for the accelerated development of critical infrastructure needed to unleash our continent's full potential. We need to connect Africa, but this cannot be possible without investing in critical infrastructure, and we need to partner in order to do so. In the 21st century, Africa, there is an even more compelling need and urgency to connect our people from Dakar in Senegal's Atlantic coast to Djibouti, the Gulf of Aden, from Mombasa, Kenya, to Lagos in Nigeria, from Cairo to Cape Town. But this dream cannot be realized unless we find viable solutions to mobilize the required infrastructure financing. Therefore, this forum is important as it presents us an exceptional opportunity for government agencies, private financiers, and stakeholders to come together, share their knowledge, expertise, and experience as we strive to come up with innovative solutions to the challenges we face in financing and implementing world-class infrastructure across our country. I believe in the years ahead, we reaffirm our commitment to do even more to assist African champion companies and African investors. Today, Nairobi is the headquarters of 50 international development organizations, as well as several global multinationals operating on the African continent. This creates an environment, I believe, of excellence and mentorship that enables African champion companies and investors to take a leap to the next level. I want to thank at this stage my good friend and your fellow African champions, because I believe that what you're trying to do is to provide valuable lessons based on the experiences that you have had. And I have understood that you have also discussed the options towards creating a Pan-African financing vehicle for infrastructure, and you have made the first steps towards creating a Pan-African infrastructure plan that we can market jointly as a continent. Let me underline this fact, that the African Union also has a key role to play in promoting and supporting efforts of member states towards the realization of their development goals and addressing the challenges they face in implementing infrastructure projects. So in this regard, I want to continue to challenge my friend and brother through you, the union, that we must do more. That the African Union must become the vehicle that promotes our prosperity and our unity. In every African culture and society, in all our languages, there is a common saying from our ancestors that always reminds us that unity is strength. If as a continent we came together and build regional and continental infrastructure platforms and networks, the benefits for the individual states, regional blocs, and the continent as a whole will elevate our entire continent to greatness. I commend you, Afro champions, for your initiative. I commend the African Union's High Representative for Infrastructure for convening this infrastructure Boma. And I look forward to our continued collaboration as we explore further innovative and practical game-changing solutions aimed at accelerating the social and economic prosperity of our country. Indeed, on behalf of the government of Kenya, I once again reaffirm our long-standing commitment to serving as a leading hub for African champions, particularly African multinational companies seeking to expand their operations and influence across the African continent and beyond. I want to take this opportunity also to thank all moderators, all the panelists, all the speakers, participants for their active participation and invaluable contribution during this conference. So I will finish the written one. But once again, I really just want to thank you. We have heard of what the challenges are, but there is one challenge that we have not talked about, because we're always shy to talk about it because you're shy of addressing sometimes leadership. And I'm surprised that my brother Raila, who is always aggressive against leadership, has not mentioned. But really, the biggest problem that we have is not that we lack the money. It is not that we lack the brains. It is not that we lack capacity. It is not that we lack opportunity. But we have become very petty as leaders in our thinking. And this is the truth. That we have become more egotistical about our positions. We have become more, pride as opposed to practical. And I don't believe that that was the dream of the founders of this great continent. They wanted us to struggle for independence in order to become bigger and better, not myopic and small thinking. And that was the spirit of pan-Africanism, a spirit that unfortunately we have lost and we're trying to regain. I heard somebody mention, I don't know who's I'm going to say, saying that the future of the African continent lies in my hands and my fellow leaders. I'm sorry, that's not where it lies. The future of the African continent lies in your hands, in our people's hands. This is where the future lies. And where we find impediments, we must deal with impediments and sort them out. And I'm telling you, Africans are beginning to start to take their future in their own hands. And those who are going to be impediments, anyway, mnajionea, sio mimi nasema, it's happening, right? So what we need to do is to become facilitators of our people, is to become facilitators of our private sectors. It is to remove the smallness of thinking into the largeness that Africa truly is, and to facilitate that to become a reality. I don't know, many of you are Kenyans also, so you know the story. Last year, or 2 years ago, we were fighting severely with my good brother here as to who will be president, who will not be president, who will be what, right? And we fought. And, the country was not going this way or that way, and we had an election. My friend went and said he's rejected it. He doesn't agree. Forced us to another one. Now we kept saying, now how many elections are we going to continue having? But at one point, we came up to terms and said, what is leadership at the end of the day? What is it that we want to do? Is it to move our countries forward, or is it about individual people? And for a brief moment, we sat back and we said, no, it is wrong for us to split and move our country backward in order for one individual to move forward. and we have to find a solution. And we decided that we must come together and work together in order to be able to achieve that dream, that vision that was our forefathers. That's why they struggled. They didn't struggle for us to come and play small politics. They suffered because they wanted all of us to move forward together. And truth be told, that is what we have been working on. That is what we have been discussing. That is the agenda that we have put at center stage. Huh? That's why I encouraged him. You know, this is a critical agenda. How do we bring our people together? That's why I have no problem. We may belong to different political parties, we may come from different political regions, but we have the same objective. So, if I can use his brain, if I can use his energy, if he can use mine, and we are able to move forward together, why not? Why not? You know? Why not? You know, I find it so strange that where we have been trying to move to bring people together, when you read the newspapers and you listen to people in funerals and in weddings talking, do you know, from the first time we met, we have never mentioned the word ODM, we have never talked about the Jubilee, we have talked about Kenya, we have talked about Africa. But if you read the papers, oh no, this is new political machinations, I don't know, who is planning, he has never told me he wants to be president in 2022. I have not told him that I want to continue to be president in 2022. We have just been talking about the issues that affect our people. When it comes to infrastructure, what do we need to do? And we discuss, and we support one another, and we agree. When it comes to health, this is what we need to do. What is this issue of digitizing our records? What is it all about? We sit, we discuss, we agree. He also gives me ideas. I explain, but he also gives me ideas that enhance something and make it even better. Now, what's wrong with that? Lakini bado huko watu, Raila anavunja Jubilee. Where do we talk about Jubilee? We talk about huko. Uhuru anaingilia mambo ya ODM. I have no clue even who ODM is. I don't know. I've never. That's a different setup. But what is most important is us, is our people, is our country, it's our future, is our continent, is the things that you're discussing here. That is what creates prosperity. Good people. Yeah? Let's focus. And there I agree completely with Raila. Let's focus on Africa positive, not always Africa negative. Africa me. No, Africa us. That's where we need to go. And us includes all of us. Right? Includes all of us. Includes all of us. And we need one another. And we have that potential. But we're not going to achieve it by being small thinkers. So please, when you're out there, it's not frugi about leaders. It's about you demanding what you want from leaders. And when you see leaders who are blocking where you want to go, that's where we do how utadil na hawa. So that we can move forward. Yes, this is about 1 billion people, not about 54 leaders. 54 leaders come and go. We behave sometimes as if we'll be here forever. But we come and go. What remains is our 1 billion people and the African continent, and that is what we must work for. God bless you.
Thank you. I invite His Excellency to address kindly and allow me to...
Excellency, the President of the Republic of Kenya, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure to welcome the President to come at the closing session of this conference. Your Excellency, when you asked me to accept this appointment by the chairperson of the African Union, I was reluctant to do so because I'm not used to failure. And I thought that I was being set up to fail. But after we had the discussions with the chairperson of the African Union, I accepted that and say that if it would mean that it's an opportunity to make a contribution to realize the African dream, I was ready to do so. Because, Your Excellency, you know, I am an I'm a pan-Africanist and also an Afro-optimist. Afro-optimists as opposed to Afro-pessimists. Afro-optimists, Afro-pessimists are those who have given up on Africa. Those who say that Africa is a lost cause, that Africa is a failed continent, Africa is like a bottomless pit. Afro-optimists are those who believe in the ability of the African people to develop Africa. And I think it can be done. The founding fathers of the African independence had a clear vision for our continent. They envisaged an Africa that was united. And Kwame Nkrumah said that Africa will only develop if it is united. And they said also that Africa cannot be free if some other African parts were under the yoke of colonialism or apartheid. South Africa has been liberated. But Africa has remained all the times something that is waiting to happen, the vision of the founding fathers of the African continent. Africa has been unable to realize the greatest potential that it has. Africa, Your Excellency, is the richest continent on earth in terms of resources. Yet it is also a paradox that the richest continent is also the poorest in terms of the living conditions of the people. Now you say, when did the rain begin to beat us? Because they say that those who believe in creation, that when the world was created, God did not start with America, via Europe, and end up in Africa. It was all created at the same time. Why is it that Africa has remained backward? Colonialism happened, but it happened in other parts of the world as well. It happened in China, in Japan, in the United States was a colony, India, Taiwan, and so on and so forth. Why is it that Africa has continued to remain behind? So you say, this is what we need to solve. And you say that we can only solve it by Africans themselves. Why is it Africa is trading very little with itself and more with the rest of the world? Because Africa is not connected. It's easier to go to Kigali and sign an agreement or continental free trade. But how do you want to realize it? And I'll give a typical example. How does Kenya trade with a country called Central African Republic? It is only a stone's throw away. We have seen about 2 hours by plane and we're in Bangui. Only South Sudan is between us and Central African Republic. But for our goods to get there, we need to get a ship which will be generous enough to go through the Cape of Good Hope, along the Atlantic coast, to Douala in Cameroon, and then by road all the way to Bangui. The French are faster there than us. So why is it not possible for us to construct a railway line that will connect us to Central African Republic? It is possible. Yet now, Your Excellency, after these deliberations, it's going to be possible to extend our lapse at the Lamu Port, South Sudan, Ethiopia Transport Corridor, to Bangui in the Central African Republic, to Yaoundé, and to Douala in Cameroon, and then create a land bridge linking the Atlantic coast and Indian Ocean, and open up the interior of the continent, which is landlocked. Chad, Niger, the DRC, Uganda, the Congo, and so on. And then we can have a situation where goods coming from the east, from Japan, from India, from China, can all come to Lamu, and then put on a train that will be dropping some in Juba, in Bangui, in Yaoundé, for dispatch to those other countries there. And the goods coming from the West, from the Americans, from Europe, will go to Douala, and vice versa. Your Excellency, traveling by road has serious challenges on the continent. First, you've got the border posts where the trucks take 3 days to cross. To say nothing about the roadblocks on the highways, which are themselves toll stations. So a lot of wastage. And that's the reason why we said we need to address the issue of rail connection to the continent. Then we also need to address the issue of energy in the continent. And we've already been told that you have, for example, the Inga in the DRC. The DRC cannot do it alone. The DRC economy itself cannot consume that energy that will be generated in the Inga. Your Excellency, the other one is air transport. This is the low-hanging fruit, because you need to open up the skies to allow free transport from country to country. At the moment, there are several restrictions. You have to sign a bilateral agreement before an airline can travel from one destination to another. But if you're traveling, for example, by private aircraft, then you have got clearances across, Your Excellency, to fly from Nairobi to Lagos. You'll be told, although we have gotten the Ugandan clearance, we still need another one from the DRC, we are waiting for. Then we are waiting for the Republic of Congo. Then we're waiting for Central African Republic. Then we're waiting for Cameroon before we reach Nigeria. It will take you 1 week to get those clearances. So we are artificially living in Stone Age, in the era of information revolution. So why is it not possible for African countries to ratify? The Yamoussoukro Agreement was signed in 1988. Up to now, only 27 countries have ratified it. So we say these are artificial barriers which have been put on the continent, which we need to remove so that we can be able to move in, like they move in Europe. The air transport should be the cheapest means of transport. This is too expensive in the continent compared to Europe, Your Excellency. So these are some issues that we have discussed here. As the rest has already been summarized. And I say that when I took over this Excellency, I found a partner in Afro-Champions. They become my partners. Not my partners in crime, but my partners in service delivery. And as already been said here, you've got very many intelligent people here, very committed, and the deliberation here has been very intensive and very productive. And I'm sure that we're leaving this place with a clear resolve that there's a challenge, is enormous, but there's capacity to deal with this challenge. And I believe that with goodwill from the government across the continent, we can be able to transform Africa from a third world economy to a first world economy by 2063, as the vision says, Your Excellency. Yesterday, I gave my proverb here about the African lion. And I will repeat it here for your own information, Your Excellency. I said, talking about an African lion is the king of the jungle in the continent, one of the big five. And the African lion is giving a message to the Asian tiger. And it's telling the Asian tiger that I'm the African lion. You have danced alone on the stage for far too long when I was asleep in the jungles of the Congo. The European bear retreated to the polars long time ago. The American panda is also on the retreat. Now I'm awake, and I'm sitting on African diamonds, on African gold, on African bauxite, African forests, and I'm sitting also on African oil. And the African continent bounded by the mighty Nile, the Congo, the Limpopo, the Niger, the Gambia, the Mount Kilimanjaro and Kenya to the east, Atlas Mountains to the west. I have all what it takes to convert all this wealth for the benefit of the people of Africa and claim the 21st century as truly the African century, the message of the African land. With those many remarks, Your Excellency, my pleasure to invite you to come and address this audience.
Opportunity to talk about a journey that started, Your Excellency, under your inspiration. This journey started exactly a year ago in Kigali, when you, together with other heads of states, made history by signing the protocol for the full movement of people, or signing into effect the Continental Free Trade Agreement. Most people didn't think it was possible for a number of reasons, because the AU has this notoriety of having agreements signed and nothing happens. I recall one of our Afro-champion members who co-hosted the African Business Forum, Strive Masiwa, saying that the first country to ratify the CFTA will be given an Afro-champion award. Mr. President, I said it's under your inspiration because Kenya was that first country to not only sign but also to ratify the Continental Free Trade Area. That gave impetus to us because we realized that Kenya was seizing the prerogative to lead the continent to do business. There are two groups of people in the world. There's a group that talk and do nothing, and there's a group that don't talk and do. We believe that with that inspiration and with the monumental journey ahead, or task ahead, how are we going to build our roads to connect the goods that we have to move, the ports that need to ferry these products, the people who need to move with no infrastructure on an uncharted path, because what we are talking about hasn't happened before. Europe before they integrated, had their infrastructure in place. But Africa doesn't have the infrastructure. We're too fragmented. We have too many regulatory bodies. How is this going to happen? I stand here representing the Afro champions, who are a group of companies who didn't even exist 20, 25 years ago. Most people didn't even see them coming. But through policies from leaders like yourself, we've seen the emergence of African multinationals whose cross-border operations are moving people, integrating the continent, breaking the barriers to intra-Africa trade, and possibly hold the chance for moving Africa into global emergence. It is based on that possibility that it can happen that we have mobilized the African champions to support your vision and the vision of men like yourself, and with the inspiration of His Excellency Prime Minister Raila Odinga, under whose auspices and under whose office we found a worthy partner to bring the African private sector, who we think hold a very strong component or a missing puzzle to bring to this equation of bringing Africa, creating the capacity we need on the continent to solve Africa's problems, looking for African solutions. To think like one of our brothers said today, not outside of the box, but far away from the box. Because within the box are toolkits that remind us that we cannot do it, it's not possible. But we believe that in this room are gathered the will of men and women who have the tenacity. We have people here from private sovereign wealth funds. We have institutions like the African Trade Insurance Agency. We have our sponsors like Africa 50. We have African Development Bank. We have GE, who is the first multinational that came to us, global multinational that came to us and offered to sign the charter to hold themselves accountable to the Afro champion standard. We are inspired by these occurrences, and it is on that basis that I would like to invite my brother, who is the vice chair of the Afro champions for the Eastern African region, representing President Obasanjo, who missed his flight yesterday and couldn't come, and also our co-chairs Aliko Dangote and President Mbeki, to come here and give us a synthesis of some of the deliberations that have gone in the past 2 days, which we believe gives us the opportunity to begin to see Africa through our eyes. With that, I'd like to invite Alimi Foriki. Thank you very much.
Afro champions, partners, friends that we have made these last 48 hours, good evening. I want to use this opportunity, first of all, to convey the apologies of His Excellency Olusegun Obasanjo, who was supposed to be here since yesterday, but his weather was in a country where Boma carries a very special meaning. It's where the Kenyan Constitution was drafted, at the Boma. Boma has a very strong meaning in Swahili, and we are very happy to have been allowed to be here, coming from more than 25 African countries, but also from many places abroad. We have our colleagues from the diaspora. We have friends from all over the world who have come here because they understand the opportunity that So my duty in these 5 minutes that I have is to try and summarize what we have done these last 48 hours. And I know, Mr. President, through prior engagements with you, there is nothing I'm going to tell you today that is new to you. But I'm going to use the platform, because it's a unique platform, to summarize nonetheless. We came here, this group of people who are in this room are extraordinary people. We selected them carefully. Some of them thought they were here because of the positions they occupy in their respective institutions. That's not the case. We selected them personally because we wanted people to come here who are capable of thinking differently. Because all the problems we are trying to address, including the main one, which is infrastructure and its financing, have been with us since time immemorial. They have been discussed every day, and that we are trying to solve them every day. But for some reason, we are people with special brains, with a special commitment to the development of this continent, put them in a room, not in a place where you make some grandstanding speeches and so on and so forth, but you are actually required to contribute productively and intelligently, and you keep questioning the status quo. So that's what has happened in these last 2 days, and we have incredible results. The results are, we think we have figured out, actually, that what has been believed until now to be the biggest hindrance to infrastructure projects development, resolution, is not money. We have been reassured so many times that money has never been the problem. After all, Africa managed to raise, without a lot of effort, and going most of the time to one single source, has managed to raise $2 trillion over the last 60 years for infrastructure alone. Unfortunately, though, after all those investments, we still struggle with every new project. We still struggle with every new investment. We still struggle with every new feasibility study, with every new project design. Turns out, very little of this money, if any, was used to create lasting, embedded capabilities within our countries. Capability to think, capability to raise money, to innovate for African projects, taking into account African circumstances. We seem to tend to always copy and paste models we have learned in business schools abroad. We copy and paste, we try and do, most times it doesn't work. And that's why we and our children are being told repeatedly, it cannot be done, you cannot do it. Wait until we are ready, you'll queue up, we'll come to you in the line, and we'll tell you how to do it, we'll give you the money to do it. But we have figured out that we don't have to wait. We have to invest, because we have to invest in capability. That is the shortcut we cannot make. But there is a lot of stuff that we can start doing now. We got a commitment this morning from none other than Cabinet Secretary, who has an understanding that airlines exist not just to fly people. Airlines exist because they have to be part of the wider infrastructure systems that we need to us to be able to build our economies and move forward and secure our countries and do a lot of other things. And because of that, governments in Africa are being encouraged to ensure that we build airlines. We not just focus single-mindedly or narrow-mindedly on the fact that airlines tend to keep losing money. Let's look at the entire value chain of aviation. You're going to find that actually money is being made. Unfortunately, though, money is being made not by Africans. Because we focused on the planes, we didn't focus on fixing planes, we didn't focus on training cabin crew and cockpit crew and everything else. We focused on repairing engines when they break. We didn't fix on building the tourism infrastructure that extracts a lot of money from the aviation inputs. And that is what we're now going to focus on, Mr. President. We are waking up to the fact that there is money being... There is a money-making business. The road doesn't make money, the road doesn't make money. But I don't know an engineer who goes into a road project and loses money. I don't know a consultant who goes into a road project and loses money. I don't know a bank that finances a road project and loses money. Everybody else makes money. Problem is, the engineers, the consultants, the contractors, the financiers have always been foreign. So we build a road all right, we build a railroad all right, we get that shiny object, but then the paying hassle begins. We start paying and externalizing all the money that comes from that investment. And it's our money. Whether we borrowed it or we raise money locally, it's our money. But most times we tend to raise money from the foreign sources, we destabilize our financial systems, and we keep paying and we trap ourselves in debt to a point where our decisions can no longer be made by ourselves. We have learned to make what decisions for our countries. In a session about energy infrastructure, where we found that we are being told we have gas, all right. We have discovered a lot of gas in Africa. Hundreds of trillion cubic feet of gas. But everybody is saying the gas is so expensive, we cannot start using it. There are cheaper sources. Gas is too expensive. And they're just focusing on the price of gas, the cost of getting it out of the ground, processing it, and supplying it. But I was asking a different question. Don't tell me about the cost of gas. Tell me the cost of 600 million people today not having electricity. I want our economists to work that out. For every country, the cost of not having energy. Don't tell me about the cost of energy. Tell me the cost to our people and to our future of not having it. And tell me if you are willing to face that future. Then you're going to see that the 12 cents is nothing. The cost they are talking about is just their cost. They're not talking about our cost. Our cost is so much higher. We are 600 million people without electricity today. At the rate we are growing, by the time we are 2 billion in 31 years, in 31 years, there's going to be more than 1 billion people without electricity. There's going to be more than 2 billion people without electricity very soon. You tell me the cost of these people not having electricity. Don't tell me about the cost of electricity for a unit of electricity from coal or from wherever. Tell me the cost of not having it. That is what we have been talking about, Mr. President. I think we have generated a sense of urgency that hasn't been here before. But we have been talking amongst not people who are just interested in the subject matter, but people who are actually working on the front lines of these issues, who have been struggling to connect. We have people in this room who have billions of dollars wanting to be spent, but have not been finding projects to spend. Because they find governments, for example, locked in agreements with the World Bank, and therefore they cannot come in. We find governments that don't trust private sector operators or private sector sources of funding. They think they're just going to profiteer, they're going to extract profits, that's all they care about, as if the providers of World Bank money don't profiteer. World Bank doesn't have money. World Bank has its money sources that are financials, they're hedge funds. They make money. So we say, oh, look at it. Somebody somewhere is making money, it's just not us. And they're holding us back. Now we have decided that it's actually possible and viable if we all play ball for Africa to have an infrastructure fund. We have the likes of Africa 50 who actually have money from African governments. And who are going to, they have $1 billion today, they're going to raise a lot of money, leverage that to raise a lot of money. But are they going to be invited in the room to invest in projects that are looking for funding? Or are we going to keep going to the traditional sources of funding and to listen to their traditional advice that keeps telling us every time we cannot do it, we have to wait, we have to stand in the queue? I hope that we have generated a consensus among us that Africans can do this, that Africans need to do this, that if not our future, then the future of our children depends on the decisions we make today. So, Mr. President, I would like to request you, because I know you understand me, but I'd like to request you to talk to your fellow presidents about the need for us to change, not only the narrative, but the way we do business. Africa's problems are not going to be solved by people who are not Africans, but people can benefit from our problems. People are saying we cannot develop Inga because it's too expensive. It requires $100 billion to do all the phases. But they are waiting to sell us energy because they know we are going to need it. And if we don't build Inga, we are going to have to buy it from them. But Congo cannot do it by itself. Congo needs collaboration with other African countries. Maybe Congo at this point in time is not willing to collaborate. But, Mr. President, you and your colleagues can start this conversation. Most infrastructure projects, on the face of them, they don't make a lot of sense financially. But the economic benefits can be calculated. Our economists have not been working them out. They have been doing these infrastructure projects as if they are being forced to do them. But we don't have a choice. If we don't do them, I even do not want to imagine what's going to happen. So there is the CFTA. The CFTA is going to open up African borders for trade. And we are very excited about it, but we worry at the same time that we are going to have nothing to trade. And the markets we are opening up are going to be seized by those who are ready, and the ones who are ready are not us. So we need to provide the industrialists with electricity that they can use. We need to provide them the access to markets that they require. We need Africans to move across borders quickly and fast and cheaply. We want cargo to be moved at low cost, at high speed. If it happens only in Kenya, it's not helping anybody. If it happens only in Tanzania, it's not helping anybody. It has to happen in every African country. So, Mr. President, you and your colleagues need to talk to one another. This is a joint project. The future of Africa is, I think, in your hands. We are ready to play. We know how to play. We are motivated and encouraged and inspired. We are not afraid anymore. We just are looking to your leadership and hope that you're going to provide it, sir. I thank you very much for listening to me.
With us. We know that he's a very, very busy person, but because of his commitment to Africa, he has been here with us this afternoon. Asante, Your Excellency. I also like to congratulate the High Representative, the champions, Afro-champions, and you, the participants, for what has been a very distinct success out of this meeting. You've done a wonderful job. The highlights tell their story. And we thank you very much because you've laid a foundation that will contribute to the rapid and inclusive development of Africa. Priorities matter. Priorities give us focus. So we would like to request from the High Representative and the Afro-champions to come up with a priority list of projects under infrastructure and fully aligned to the African Continental Free Trade Area that can be rapidly financed and executed. And from the point of view of the African Union, the key infrastructure projects that we would like to see are those that support manufacturing and agro-processing. Because these two subsectors are key to increasing levels of intra-African trade. Right now, it's at 18% of global trade. When we remove tariff barriers, it can increase by 52.3% by 2023. And it can be double that, which is about 101% or 104% if we remove non-tariff barriers. But we need products to support that trade. And the key ones are manufacturing and agro-processing, because already 42% of intra-African trade is made up of manufacturers. We make another demand to the High Representative and the Afro-champions. You've assured that this was not a talk shop. It was a focused discussion on delivering results. And the highlights show that you have delivered results. So we urge you between now and July to close deals. And we also invite you to sign those deals at the African Continental Free Trade Area Business Forum, which is going to take place when we have the extraordinary summit to launch the operational phase of the African Continental Free Trade Area. And when you have that visibility, you demonstrate to yourselves and the rest of the world that you produced very distinct results in Nairobi. This is the demand we make to you. And I end here. I thank you very much, Your Excellency, for being with us. I thank all of you, the participants, for producing these very good results. And I thank you for the opportunity to be with you this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I request all of us to be seated and remain with His Excellency. May we be upstanding for the nation.